Yeah, and it's been hard to move away from the gun conversation. We've had some listeners call in and say, I'm like so sick of talking about this. I'm sick of dealing with this. And unfortunately, we had so many events just in the past week where there were shootings of people making basic mistakes, going to the wrong house in Ralph Yarl's case, driving into a driveway that was the wrong driveway, getting into the wrong car in Texas. All of these different events led to shootings. And in the case of 16-year-old Ralph Yarl, he is alive. He is at home. It is amazing that is the case because he was shot in the head and the arm, and he had to go from house to house and beg for help. 3 houses before someone finally helped him. And Andrew Lester, the shooter, finally made his appearance in court.
Big headlines from this. He pleaded not guilty in this shooting, faced with multiple felony counts for the Thursday shooting of 16-year-old Ralph Yarl. He also was told by the judge of certain conditions of his bond. Among them, he has to report within 24 hours to a bond supervision company. They'll visit once every month at least. After that, he has to turn over any weapons that he has to police. He cannot have a concealed carry permit. He said he does have one, so he'll turn that over as well. And then finally, and of course we expected this, he can have no contact with Ralph Yarl and his family. His attorney saying they will work with authorities immediately to make sure all of those procedures are followed. And with that, Ralph Yarl and his attorney exited through that same private entrance. We have producers and crews circling the courthouse, so if they even poked their heads outside, we hope to hear of that soon. But it was a quick hearing, Peter, with a lot of updates, as you said.
Maggie, you also spoke to the neighbor who says that he helped Ralph Yarl after he was shot. What did he tell you?
Yeah, we know, Peter, that Ralph Yarl, after he was shot, went running for help. His family said that he begged for help at basically 3 homes. And finally, a neighbor yelled at him to get on the ground and put his hands in the air. Ralph, this wounded kid, they say complied. At that point, that's when James Lynch, a separate neighbor from all that commotion before, says he basically heard the yelling. He came running. He hopped a fence. And he says he got down next to this teenager who he could tell obviously was gravely wounded, stayed with him till paramedics arrived. Here's part of what he told us. Take a listen.
He wasn't alone. He wasn't by himself. Somebody cared. To lay there in the street alone and scared and bleeding, that's awful. He wasn't alone. I was with him as soon as I knew he needed help, I was there. And I was there with him until the right people were there to make sure that he was okay.
One of many people obviously so shaken by this. I do want to end, Peter, again, if we can pull back up that photo of Ralph Yarl and his attorney, his family's attorney, Lee Merritt. That photo is just astonishing, given what he's been through. He's outside, he's smiling, he's home healing. His family, Peter, saying that he is recovering from this shooting one day at a time.
I cannot say enough about how disgusted I am about the 3 different homes that would not help a 16-year-old boy who was shot in the head and screaming that he had been shot and begging for help. Mm-hmm. And in addition to the trauma that Ralph Yarl has experienced by being shot in the head and the arm for trying to pick up his siblings at their friend's house, he also has to grapple with that, with going in this situation where he's completely helpless and is relying on other people to help him. Yeah. And then being rejected and told to get on the ground and put his hands up like he's in trouble.
He's a suspect.
Yeah, or he's a threat when he's the one who has been wounded in a way that could have killed him.
There were 3 words that the guy who laid with him in the street said that really stuck with me, and that is, I was going to wait for him until the right people showed up to take care of him, which indicates to me that in some way, the guy who laid with Ralph Yarl, he did believe that maybe there was still a threat, that I needed to stay there until the right people, authorities, people who were going to provide safety and comfort and life-saving medical attention, not the neighbors who ignored him. I saw interviews of a reporter out in the street, like putting a mic into cars as they were leaving their driveways. And it was like radio silence in support of the guy who almost killed this child because of his Fox News fantasies about dangers and Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the 24-hour outrage cycle.
Right. And we talked about on the last episode that Andrew Lester is claiming that he was in fear for his life because he saw a, quote, 6-foot-tall black man and was scared for his life.
Yeah.
And we talked about how Ralph Yarl is 5'8", 16-year-old kid.
Yeah.
He is not a 6-foot-tall man. And yet you will see Fox News hosts, I've seen at least one, saying, well, you can really see how Andrew Lester would be scared with a 6-foot-tall young man. You're using the phrase young man rather than child.
Right.
To somehow say that Andrew Lester was justified in his fears. What's interesting about Fox News saying that is that Andrew Lester apparently is a fan of Fox News. And Jesse, you talked about this on the last episode, that someone like Andrew Lester, who is, I believe, in his 80s, and just sitting at home, apparently, watching Fox News, this was confirmed by his family.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anna, so we're standing here in Liberty, Missouri at the Clay County Courthouse. We were here yesterday in that courtroom when 84-year-old Andrew Lester pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. He's the white homeowner in this case in Kansas City who police say indeed shot 16-year-old Ralph Yarl. I want to be clear, him pleading not guilty does not mean that he's saying that he didn't shoot Yarl. We know, according to court documents, that he told detectives that he did so. He believed at the time in self-defense because he said he thought Yarl was trying to break into his home. He claims he grabbed for the door handle. Yarl's family says he absolutely did not, that he only rang the doorbell. That teen, of course, at home recovering from gunshot wounds to his head and arm. Overnight, by the way, some added context to this shooting. Andrew Lester's ex-wife telling the New York Times she hasn't spoken to her ex-husband in decades. They divorced, records show, in the 90s, but she said, unfortunately, this does not surprise her, telling the Times that during their 14-year marriage, Andrew Lester, she says, was prone to fits of rage, and she says would smash things when he got angry. Also, two of his grandsons talking to the Kansas City Star and the Independent, telling them that their grandfather, one grandson says, lives in what he called a 24-hour news cycle of fear and paranoia, talking frankly about a lot of far-right conservative media outlets, saying there was a lot of conversation about stand your ground and the need to defend your home. Also, one of the grandsons saying his grandfather had spoken disparagingly, he says, about his words, black people, gay people, and immigrants. And I want to be very clear, we have not spoken to those sources independently, Anna, but definitely some added context as this teen recovers from this tragic shooting.
And this, of course, is not surprising. Like I talked about last time on the show, having not had this information, I was just generally talking about when you have a media conglomeration with Newsmax and OAN and Daily Wire and Daily Caller and Fox News that is just 24/7 fear, outrage. Black people are scary. Black people are criminals. Black people are dangerous. Immigrants, gay, Antifa, everything else. This is the inevitability. When you mix in easy access to guns and fear for your life and safety, that's what's going to happen. I mean, they've done study after study of this older generation of boomers have been like indoctrinated to believe the wildest of conspiracy theories and believe everything they watch on Fox News. What would you expect to happen? So, unfortunately, this is a situation that's probably going to get worse before it gets better. And it's going to take all of our efforts organizing and being active in politics, at the very least showing up to the polling stations to vote, to enact policy that will avoid these types of things happening in the future. We'd love to know what you think. 657-464-7609. Of course, you can email a voice memo from your smartphone to I doubt it at Dollemore.com.